And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, a man who's seen his share of summertime sadness. He's Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
Oof. If you're talking about the dark days of Tigers baseball, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. Yeah, I've seen some rough stretches, and suddenly the Tigers are back in one. They kind of got bashed by the Blue Jays in their return to Comerica Park. They've lost 10 out of 11, and we tried to talk about this last episode, and now it's trying to put this into perspective a little bit more. Like, you don't want to overreact to the lows. At the same time, we can't just ignore this and be like, oh, it's okay. This has got to end at some point. The guys have to start playing better. It's been pretty bad. I think I'm starting to get concerned because there's not going to be, although you can get some help at the trade deadline, you're not going to radically reshape this team. You're going to get, 2, 3, at most probably 4 players. This is what you have, and a lot of these guys are bound to start performing better. You can get some help from the minors, whatever it may be. But you kind of got to write the vibes. I didn't love the vibes in the Tigers' return home.
Yeah, so I mean I can just tell you about what the vibes are on Tigers Twitter, and they're not great. I just got a comment from Trent that's like, it seems like maybe last year, end of last year, the beginning of this year was a fluke, and like what's we're seeing right now and what we saw like most of last season might be really what they are. I understand that sentiment. I don't want to believe that. But that's an example of Tigers Twitter vibes, and then there's countless other kind of.
I think the real problem is the media is not willing to ask AJ Hinch why he doesn't have the team prepared. That was a comment I got. Well, that's the real issue here. Clearly, that would solve probably everything.
So.
Yeah. No, I like to believe the Tigers are a good team. Like, they've had a 162 game stretch last year, this year combined, where they were the best team in baseball. Run differential is still a very good predictive stat. They fare very well in that department. I think there's more evidence now that this is a good team. Now, it's not a perfect team, and I think that's why you are seeing this very awful, ugly stretch.
Yeah, and I actually didn't even mean to like come on with like this positive thinking, but like when I think about that, like that kind of sentiment, like I think about like this is a team that kind of has ridden different waves by different guys, right? So it's not like the entire time Spencer Torkelson looked like a 1-1 if you're talking about last year into this year. You see what I'm saying? Like there's been a couple constants, but actually not. It's been relatively balanced, I would say. So, like, in theory, there's going to be some regression to the mean in a good way. What we're seeing right now is, like, there's not a better way to put it. It's piss poor. Like I guess we're allowed to say that. Jemai
say whatever
Jones,
we want. Still, we have sponsors now. Let's just say whatever. Just try to keep it clean for the kids out there.
Like Jemai Jones, like, give him credit. Like the guy's put together. He's got a home run, like 2 in his last 3 games, and so like that's nice to see. And the Jemai Jones thing is part of the puzzle that we talked about on our last episode. That like the Tigers are going to try to win like their way, and Jemai Jones is like an example. Like right now, like he's not permanently a part of this team or anything, but like right now he is a part of that puzzle and like how they're configuring the team. And then when we talk about the Suarez thing and how that wouldn't necessarily be a fit, so like there's a litmus test for fans right now to like trust the process of the coaching staff in the front office. No. But they're just fans. You're just we're just media, whatever. But like you were in the clubhouse today before or after the game, like the real guys that got to like trust the process are the ones that toe the rubber and get into the batter's box and take the field. So what kind of vibe check, especially after this streak and then, obviously continue today, like what can you shed some light into like what you're seeing from the guys right now?
Yeah. I mean, this was the first time I had been around them since, just before the All-Star break, or in the case of some of them, the All-Star game. There weren't a lot of guys around either before or after the game. I don't necessarily blame them for not wanting to chum it up with the media during this stretch, but it did seem a little bit different, right? I mean, that generally is a sign, like when the vibes aren't good, that clubhouse is pretty empty, that clubhouse is pretty quiet. And I thought it was Thursday. Now, it was first game back at home, first time these guys had been at home in 14, 15, 16 days. So maybe they were just busy. Maybe they had other stuff to take care of. I'll be curious, when I get back to the park Friday to see if it's kind of still that way. The few guys who talked, in front of the cameras said the right things. The guys in here still have faith. We just got to get through the stretch. But Dylan Dingler, even post game, did kind of admit the longer this goes on, the harder you try to snap out of it, the worse you end up doing. So he was like, you have to try your hardest to not try too hard, was kind of the sentiment he laid out. And there's something real to that. I think anyone who's ever played a sport can probably relate to that to some degree. AJ Hinch seemed to be in pretty good spirits, which I think is, I guess, a good thing. Obviously, he's about as consistent of a leader as you're going to find. Teams reflect that. He's not one to get emotional. I don't think a team meeting is going to solve this. I'm not sure AJ going in the clubhouse and throwing a bunch of stuff is going to solve this. But then it's like, well, what does solve it? I guess it's trusting the process. But are you going to snap your fingers and go back to being good? That is the question I have. How do you snap out of this? Because as much as we talk about the Tigers and they know how to flush it and they focus on winning today's game, momentum is somewhat, it carries over. Hitting is contagious and lack of hitting tends to be contagious. And we have seen the extremes of both so far this season. I guess that's one of the mysteries of the sport. Some's got to turn around soon before we got to really start taking this seriously.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that the verbal cliches are just that. They're just verbal. That's like,
yes.
you can say that stuff, but until you start connecting, until you start executing pitches, and I felt for Reese today, because for 7/8 of his
really
outing, he was outstanding, I thought. And there was some hard contact, but it was the right kind of hard contact. It was obviously Perez was quite busy there in right field today, but you thought this could have been one of those prime the pump games where it's you get the early lead, you're surviving, with it being 1-1. Reese is doing well, and then the dam just unleashes on you, and then we're stuck talking about these platitudes. But there is some.
Kieran, that's been exactly kind of my concern with Reese Olson. And when I talk about who's your number 2 starter for the playoffs, can Reese Olson get right? Through his career, he's not really been a great 3 times around the order guy. And we saw last year when he returned from injury, they didn't use him in long stints. His OPS career, first time through the order, 637. Second time, 598. Third time, jumps up to 794. It's a pretty substantial jump. Gives up more homers, gives up more loud contact. I think we've seen him. He can go 6 and 7. But if I have a worry with Reese Olson, it's is this really a third time through type of pitcher?
Yeah, and in terms of regular season, you're playing 13 games in 13 days, and this is not the only stretch of the season that we've seen, nor will we see, that your off days are few and far in between, and you got to start preserving bullpen arms and blah 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 blah. And then you think about the lack of depth in the bullpen in general, blah blah blah. So we all understand that. So that's all part of it. But there is something, Cody, that at least in theory and in practice, we'll talk about it, could be a little bit of a boom for this offense. And that leads us to our chart topper of the week, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. So, taking this in a little bit of a different direction, Cody, we're going to talk about Kerry Carpenter. Now, obviously, he hasn't done anything to be a chart topper recently because he has been hurt, although he is rehabbing right now in Toledo, or with Toledo, I should say. And some people pointed it out on our YouTube comments, which, by the way, thank you for everybody who watches on YouTube, subscribes, and comments. And then, same thing on X as well. Like, look at how they're doing with and without Carpenter. And there is, a lot of benefit to that. And if you just look at what they've done since he went on IL, which is more or less this wretched month of July, they are 7-12 the month of July. So that's all without Carpenter, and overall 8-13 since Carpenter went on the IL. And then if you want to extend it out a little bit more, obviously he had been hobbled by that hamstring before that as well. So if there can be such a thing this season, because we know hamstrings are weird, a fully healthy Kerry Carpenter is obviously a great asset to this team, to this lineup. Just for example, they have a 60 win percentage with him in games that he's played this year. Yeah. And I just laid
47-31.
Yeah. So since and I obviously, as I said, 8-13, it's quite a little bit of a difference there, since he went on IL. And I thought they would do, I'll be honest, I thought they would do a better job of sustaining a level of offensive production without him. Don't want to read all this much into it in terms of this, in terms of that, and matchups and placement and blah, blah, blah. The bottom line is they're not winning games without him, and they're winning quite a few with him. And that's also, Cody, of note, that's really without Kerry Carpenter being full Kerry Carpenter. So what do I mean by that? So last season, obviously he was hurt as well, but last season in 296 plate appearances, he had an offensive WAR of 2.1. This season with 280, so we're in the range, 280 plate appearances, an offensive WAR of 1.0. So what that tells me is that we still have not seen full Kerry Carpenter this season, period, much less, with him being out with injury. So if you're thinking about where is something around the corner that could help this team, it's an unknown, but in theory, it would be with Kerry Carpenter healthy and in the lineup on a, nearly everyday basis, and then a pinch hit basis on days against lefties, which brings us to our pick of the week presented by DraftKings. And this is not a pick that I'm recommending. So I want to be clear. But if you go to DraftKings Sportsbook and you look at MVP odds, they list, 20-ish guys. And Carpenter's one of them. And, Scooble's one of them. Riley Green is one of them. This is an Aaron Judge award to lose, and Cal Raleigh to, give the old college try for it. But, I'm not recommending that you place a pick on Kerry Carpenter to win MVP. But what I'm saying is the fact that he is mentioned here, Cody, means that he is a high-profile enough player that they know that people are going to look at this and be like, oh, Kerry Carpenter, MVP odds. And it's going to resonate with the brain. The Tigers had 6 All-Stars this year. Kerry Carpenter was not one of them. Scooble and Green are the only ones that are on this top 20 list other than Kerry Carpenter. So I just wanted to put this out there to just kind of illustrate in a different way, his value to the team. You see what I'm saying?
Well, sure. I've always thought the lineup something about it just feels a lot different with Carpenter in it. That's about the least analytical thing you can say, but I think it holds true. He's another power bat. He's a decision point for opposing managers. Even if he's out of the game, he looms as a threat that can impact the game just by his mere presence on the bench. He gives you a little more meat, a little more power in that order that I think at times still kind of lacks it, that still kind of needs a bopper in there, and opposing teams view him as that. I think the Tigers, as bad as this stretch is, need to be as patient as possible, making sure that when Kerry comes back, he's 1,000% right, because we saw him play an extended stretch of baseball where he just did not look right. The Tigers delayed putting him on the IL then. I think it was probably a mistake. They're kind of paying for it now a little bit. It wasn't like the All-Star break ended and Kerry was back. But if it takes another week, if it takes 10 days, if it takes 2 weeks, I think you take that time, because this is a man you want right for the stretch and you want right in October.
Couldn't agree more because, I mean, that's just like another example of what Glaber, was talking about a couple days ago, where it's like, you don't want to be playing your best baseball in July. You want to be playing your best baseball in September, October, and you want to be at your most healthy. Obviously, nobody's going to be healthy after 162 games and then, playoffs at in October, but you want to be at your most healthy. You want to be able to put your best foot forward. And it's clear statistically, anecdotally, there's my favorite word, and just visually, to have Kerry Carpenter live. So that's why it's not a pick, but it's an illustration of his value. Kerry Carpenter MVP plus 20,000, just goes to show you that he is right there among the guys that are game changers according to DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Anyone actually placing that bet should probably listen close to this disclaimer coming up.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
All right, before we get going, we're going to dive into some more trade deadline talk, including even some fresh intel. But first, a big announcement we're proud of. Our merch store is finally up, tigerterritoryshop.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you can scan the QR code, go straight there. If you're listening on the pod, tigerterritoryshop.com. We've got hats, hoodies, shirts, mugs, gym bags, anything you can think of. This has been a long time in the works. We are excited about it. So again, that's tigerterritoryshop.com. Want
to show your friends that you know ball? tigerterritoryshop.com. There you go. All right, let's get into some trade deadline thoughts, Cody. I was doing some stewing. I was doing some thinking, and I kind of started preparing myself mentally for, I've listened to most of every Scott Harris press availability. I've read, his on the record interviews, and I feel like I have we've had him on the podcast. I feel like I have a decent gauge on like how he approaches things, Not saying I'm an expert, but I think I got a good gauge of Scott Harris. And the more I thought of it, the more I was like, guys like Scott Harris, they don't like losing deals. And a lot of like those kinds of people view the trade deadline as a negative on the ROI. Especially when you're talking about trading for somebody who is, on an expiring contract and blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, I just, you hear the Dodgers and how they do things. You look at Theo Epstein's history, and obviously Theo was a mentor to Scott. And it's like, I don't think he's going to be there. Like, he's going to view the team as there yet to make one of those kind of seismic moves, if you would. And that's how I'm going to kind of approach my mindset right now with what the Tigers are going to do at the trade deadline. They're obviously going to do something, but it's also new territory. So it's hard to really gauge what you think Scott will do, outside of these parameters I just discussed. So that's kind of something that I've kind of gone into. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, I know I said recently the Tigers tend to be very tight-lipped, and they are. But I did have a couple pretty enlightening conversations recently. I think our sense on things has largely been correct. That's something you spend time around this team. It's not necessarily hard to know at least the gist of what they are thinking, right? And so they're going to do something. They're not going to stand pat. But I think pragmatism more than seismic moves is their thought. I think you're right that the Tigers kind of view the trade deadline as overrated, because how often are you actually winning deals, both short-term and long-term? I went down a rabbit hole. Saurez on The Athletic did a great article in 2019 about what wins in the postseason. And you guys should go look that up if you can. There's some interesting numbers in there. One of them, the bullpen, regular season performance by the bullpen doesn't really correlate to the postseason. Bottom line, like bullpens are random. But power does play. Contact also plays. We'll talk about that maybe more in a second. Starting pitching can help, but there's a long track record of starters who have ended up not actually pitching in postseason games, whether it's teams trying to make a push and they didn't make it, or the Astros traded for UC Kikuchi last season and he didn't start in the postseason because the Tigers beat him in 2 games. That's a long way of saying I think the Tigers are focused mostly on their relief market right now. That really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. The question that still kind of looms, what does that mean? Are they intent on getting a Ryan Helsley? I think they have some interest. David Bednar, I'm sure they have some interest. I get the sense in-division trades aren't going to be a thing. So, Andrea and Griffin Jacks, Emmanuel Clase, sounds great. Probably not going to happen. I wouldn't be shocked if they target one of those guys. Let's be real. They need a swing and miss weapon. But again, prices are going to be high. This is a seller's market. I wouldn't be shocked if the Tigers are also poking around on kind of versatile mid-relief type options, or at least like not the big names, probably not like the Kenley Jansens of the world. So I think I'm sitting here right now trying to get a better read of like, who are we talking about? Just one name that comes to mind, Kenley Jansen's teammate, Reed Detmers. He's a lefty. I think the Dietrich Inns experiment is running its course rather quickly. Detmers has a 4.17 ERA, but look at his FIP, 3.2. Look at his xERA, 3.24. He's punching guys almost 11 batters per 9 innings. He can go long. He can start if he had to. He can do some different things. That seems like a Tigers-esque option. Michael Soroka for the Nationals. He's functioning as a starter right now, but he can pitch in either role. He's a guy I was told the Tigers liked this offseason. Solid strikeout rates, solid walk rates. I'm not saying it's going to be these guys specifically. You can go look up more names. The Marlins have a couple guys, Anthony Bender, Ronnie Enriquez, that are interesting. I think maybe we should expect, I think the Tigers probably are going to get 2 relievers. And I wouldn't be shocked if one of them is more kind of this bucket of guys, or maybe someone else we're not even thinking of, in part because of the price tag game. It'd be fun to say, hey, go get Clase and go get Ryan Helsley, but then you're talking about giving up real prospect capital. I don't think the Tigers have any interest in doing that.
Yeah, and the number one thing to kind of keep in mind is like put yourself in the GM or president of baseball operations shoes for, any team that the Tigers call or you call the Tigers. And like, where does the conversation begin? Like it doesn't begin at Troy Melton, number 10-ish prospect or whatever. It's like, you're going to see what you can extract from the Tigers. And so it's like, all right, well, how untouchable is Max Clark? Like that's just where the conversation starts. How untouchable is Kevin McGonigal? How untouchable is Josue Preciño? Like that, like, especially the names that are like top of these lists, like they're going to ask for that.
Started conversations this way when he was on the other end of things as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's how the game goes. So like, and especially in the seller's market aspect of it, and that's the tough thing. And so far, the Tigers have been really able to, ride the balance between, setting up for the future with all these prospects that everybody's really excited about, and we'll be having conversations, within a calendar year probably about like when some of these guys are going to be knocking on the door of being big leaguers. But at the same time, having that sense of urgency with the whole Schoolville situation and, and contractual, the contract aspect of that. And like, but this is an opportunity to tilt it one way or another. You see what I'm saying? Like there's opportunity there. It's a seller's market. Your boy, Jerry Jones, has said, like, I don't regret when I overpay for something. I regret when I, under offer something and don't get it, so like that there's a certain mindset that can go into it and it still be worth it, even if you overpaid or the ROI isn't, exactly what you want there. And also, I guarantee you this is also part of the Scott Harris thought process is like, look, we've got 60 wins. We're among the best teams in baseball record wise. We have basically done that without any offensive output from Parker Meadows, Matt Vierling, with respect to some late inning, hits that have driven in runs, hasn't really gotten going. Trey Sweeney looks like somebody, you're probably not banking on him, but that was somebody that you were banking on and you haven't gotten much of anything. So it's like, the Carpenter thing we already talked about, like there's going to be some additions. I'm telling you, this is how he's thinking. There's going to be some additions coming in the form of guys that either haven't played or haven't played up to their level, and that's going to push us over the top. I guarantee you that's part of the thought process.
Kieran, I mean, that's another thing we've talked about and that I think we were spot on. The Tigers are thinking about internal improvements and depth just as much as they are about who they can get from the outside. I mean, pitching-wise, we're going as far and down. They're talking about Drew Summers, who, if you don't know who that is, get to know the name. I think he's coming soon. Big lefty, listed at 6'3", 250. He has been tearing it up in the minor leagues. He's got a 1.97 ERA, punching guys like crazy, pretty solid walk rates. Like that seemed Jose Urquidy, we're going to hear more and more about. Alex Lang's knocking on the door. That sounds kind of crazy to rely on those guys to carry you to the World Series. But it also sounded kind of crazy to rely on Sean Gunther and Brennan Hanafy and Brent Herter last year, and that worked pretty well. So I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I think that's a whole other conversation and a whole other debate. But I think this is very much the team's thinking. I think that applies positionally. The Suarez thing will loom. I was told the Tigers aren't ruling out Suarez, which is interesting. Okay. Not ruling out also doesn't seem like we're here to go get this guy when the Mariners and the Yankees and whoever else wants him. So I'm not totally sure what to make of that one. I do think the versatility thing remains a huge factor. If you get Suarez, it limits you. But also, let's be real. Let's swap on the roster Jahmai Jones for Suarez right now. You think the Tigers got better? Yeah, I think they got better. Now, what's it going to cost to get them? I think that's where the we're not ruling it out comes in. Like, I just don't think they're going to get in a bidding war, and they're not going to move any of their top 100 prospects, I assure you. Another thing, though, I was thinking that we talked about how power plays in the postseason. You know what else? Contact. Let's go back. Since 2019, the Nationals were the last team to win the World Series without ranking in the top 4 of home runs. In that same time frame, no one has won the World Series without ranking worse than 18th in terms of strikeout rate. So the Tigers right now rank 17th. It's actually not bad, but they strike out more often than any World Series winner since the 2018 Red Sox. Eugenio Suárez strikes out more than all but 28 hitters in Major League Baseball. You would whiff more even though you hit more home runs, so there may be some level of trade-off there in the postseason.
That's the key word, trade-off. And we have a couple names that I just wanted to throw out there just for the sake of opening up a discussion. A couple names to just kind of keep in the back of your mind, just in case. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Time for a quickie break. Todd Father and I are going to tell you about Huel, but it's mostly going to be Todd Father because I'm going to take a sip.
Well, we're talking about Huel, 27 vitamins and minerals. It's a complete meal. Let's listen. We all have busy schedules. As Scott's sipping it down, it looks delicious. It tastes delicious. When we're on the run, we need something to eat quick. And guess what? Huel is there. All different flavors. Scotty loves them. I love them. And I love how variety packed it is. And we can eat them any time of the day.
That's right. Yeah, check out the website. There's bars. There are so many different flavors. I love the black edition. Chocolate, 35 grams of protein. There's strawberry shortcake, coffee caramel, cookies and cream. I can go on. And you get yourself 15% off if you're a new customer using the code FOUL at Huel.com/foul. Please see our description for the terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition with the code FOUL at Huel.com/foul.
All right, coming back here. I was doing a medium dive. I wouldn't say it was a deep dive. I was doing a medium dive on a couple guys that could be buy low candidates and could have some sort of value added to the team. Right. So I promise you, no one's going to get excited about these two names, but I think I could at least say in theory, it could be helpful. So that would be, you said no in division trades. So the first one's already not going to work. But what about Luis Robert Jr., Cody? What
Do the White Sox count as part of the division? Maybe that one should be fair game.
So he has come on a little bit over the past couple of weeks. We anyone who's familiar with the division and just like the hype that this guy has once had is familiar with his story. But what if I told you, Cody? What if I told you that against lefties, Luis Robert Jr. has a 966 OPS?
I would say I'm surprised by that. I think that's valuable. We should note the Tigers are actually pretty good against left-handed pitching. They rank like 5th in OPS. So I think that the connection is like a right-handed bat because that's a roster spot that's available, but it's not necessarily a desperate need as much as a lot of people, myself included, have kind of portrayed it at times.
Sure. But he also runs the bases well. And he fields well. 81% or 81 percentile fielding run value on Baseball Savant and 73 base running run value on Baseball Savant. Yeah. And if you're into bat speed, he's in the 94 percentile. Again, he's essentially gonna be asset wise, he's gonna be free. He has a $20 million. He's got a couple $20-something million team options coming up that the White Sox are not going to pick up, and whoever acquires him is not going to pick up. So the White Sox are in a position where it's like, we're either going to literally say we don't want this guy employed by us for nothing, or we can acquire some prospect. So he's more like you probably could name your prize for Luis Robert Jr. And again, there is an element of value that he brings. The other name is Adolis Garcia. The Rangers still feel like I don't necessarily know exactly what they want to do. Keep in mind, Sky Harris made 2 trades last year with Chris Young with the Rangers. So there is at least some sort of, professional familiarity there. So they could have conversations. And Garcia is a guy that he was a postseason hero in Texas. So and he has excellent postseason experience. He's actually a reverse split guy. He does way better against righties than lefties. And he is an elite defender. He's still, despite his at times atrocious production at the plate, he's still a 2.2 WAR player this year. So that gives you an idea of how elite defensively he is and what his value is also on the base paths as well. So he would shore up your defense in a very strong way, and he would give you postseason experience and would, I think players like Adolis Garcia, I think he would be a good clubhouse presence as well. And again, contractually, he's I just pulled it up right here. He is under team control next season as well. So there's a little bit of, you look at it 2 ways. One, and you might be on the hook next season for a decent penny, not expensive, but more than what the Tigers are typically paying for guys right now. But if he turns out to be something, he's still an asset that you have in your organization that you could do a variety of things with. So those are 2, like I said, buy low candidates. Is there a way for them to have a role? I think yes. And it would be a little bit of outside the box thinking. So that's all. I'm not trying to stake my reputation on this, but I was just looking for a couple things that make some sense. That's all. Some sense.
Yeah, I'm a pretty hard no on both these players. They have some admirable traits, both of them, but one, they both strike out a lot. We were just talking about whiff rate. Oof. These guys don't help you there. Luis Robert, to get him on your roster, you probably have to be comfortable optioning Parker Meadows, only to replace him with the guy who's hitting 206. You're just banking on an offensive rebound. I think I'd bank on Parker Meadows before I gave up assets to basically take a similar gamble on Luis Robert while also changing your clubhouse chemistry for a guy who hasn't played on a winning team in a long time. I just don't like it. Adolis Garcia, if this was a movie you could do in the offseason, I wouldn't hate it. He has value. Again, you just pointed out his WAR. Through his defense alone, even though he's been pretty atrocious at the plate, he has value. To get the value out of his defense, you have to play him every day in right field, which means where are you playing Kerry Carpenter, who we just talked about? DH? Well, that means probably a little less playing time for Colt Keith. You have Matt Vierling, Zach McKinstry, Winsel Perez. You just have a lot of guys, and you're going to put a guy who has really fallen off there offensively. I just don't think you can justify giving a player like Garcia playing time on this Tigers team.
Sure. I mean, it's very valid pushback. That thought process is going to play itself out for a lot of guys that, the Tigers internally are considering, or maybe some guys that they get called on about. So
yeah,
then
I think there's
to produce.
I think that leads me to a little bit of a bigger point, which is like, what is worth it offensively? I said I'd made my mind up on Suarez, and I think I have, but I still go back and forth in my mind. Like, is it worth chasing Randall Grichuk in hopes you get a 30-point higher OPS than Jahmai Jones would give you down the stretch? Like, is that worth it? And you're still gambling, and it's not even a sure thing. And you have other internal options in Jahan and Andy Ibanez, and don't forget about Hao-Yu Lee, who might actually debut by season's end if they're not, another hitter added. That's actually kind of hard to justify, but it also is like, maybe that's one of those small little upgrades that the Tigers kind of pride themselves on. And it's like, okay, well, if you don't think that's worth it, then the only thing that is worth it is to get a Suarez type who you were right in the lineup at the same position every single day. And then you lose the whole thing you've built this team on, which is the versatility and the in-game matchups and all that. So I don't have a great answer to that question. I think the Tigers are such a uniquely built team. I still think big picture 5 years from now, I think the best construction is still a team with a bunch of dudes that you don't necessarily have to platoon. I mean, it's easier said than done to get those guys. But for this team, that's a tough question to answer on if either of those things are actually worth it.
Yeah, and then there's also an element of if your projections offensively are still kind of on the margins, are you looking for somebody who has more of a defensive profile than an offensive profile? Like, I'm just not ruling that out, like, in my mind. Like, it's like, well, this guy's going to make a run differential difference, on the grass or dirt, you know what I mean? But, like, not necessarily like at the plate. I just think there's probably somebody out there that they could acquire, or internal or whatever, that would play that part there too, because defense was part of this team's, MO basically as long as AJ's been there. And it's not that it's not now, but I would say there's less sureness in certain aspects of the lineup than I think we're probably used to. So, it's just like,
also, like, for as much as we talk about how free agency is actually like not efficient, getting players like the ones maybe you just mentioned makes more sense. If you can get a guy on the cheap in free agency, 1 year deal, whatever, try to take a chance on him, try to help him, grow in the off season, because you're not giving up anything unless it's a qualifying offer guy and you risk giving up a pick. At the deadline, you are giving up your internal assets. Again, should the Tigers be hoarding prospects? That's a whole other episode and a whole other debate. But reality is, I think these guys really value their draft picks, and they're not, or their prospects, and they're not, even if it's their 29th best prospect, I don't know that they want to give that up for some guy who may or may not help them in a 2-month span.
Yeah, and I'll probably say this a couple times before the trade deadline, and depending on what happens after the trade deadline. I think this clubhouse could use a little bit of indication from the front office, like, hey, we're not going for it in the sense of like putting everything on the table, but just like some sort of like, hey, they got us, another horse or whatever, and let's go. As opposed to all these guys have known is like seeing their teammates with their bags half packed, they're most or less the entire time they've been in the major league. So I think that would be fun. We'll do a vibe check after the trade deadline regardless, but I think if there is
Which is more validating? Hey, we're going to go get you guys a couple more horses. Sorry, a couple of y'all have to leave to make room for these horses. Or we have the team. You guys are the team. We maybe will get one or two more guys in here, but we think you are all we need.
If it was a sports movie, it'd be the latter. It's like everything we need is in this room. Unfortunately, not everything's a sports movie, but that's true. That is also a fair thought as well. All right, that's it. We won't talk about trade deadline anymore until next year. Just kidding. We're gonna keep talking about the trade deadline up into the trade deadline. Then we will react shortly after the trade deadline. So literally a week from now, we'll have a podcast up reacting to the moves the Tigers did or did not make. So hope you guys will join us for that. Of course, we will have a couple episodes before that as well. Anything else, Cody, before we get out of here? All right.
That's it.
Well, all right. You guys can follow along at X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cody Stavenhagen. I'm at Kieran _Steckley. Pod page is at Tiger Territory _ We got links to our store there as well as on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate all of you. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I'm Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great day.